Greetings in Jesus' wonderful name and welcome to Riverside Chats. I hope that you're enjoying your relationship with Christ, especially in your prayer life. We are looking at the series on the Sermon on the Mount. We're looking at how we should pray in the secret place. We are looking at praying in secret. Today we're going to look at some Old Testament examples of people who prayed in secret and people who got remarkable answers. The first reference is found in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verses 9 to 13. This is the reference of Samuel's own mother. Her name was Hannah. She was married to a man who had two wives. There was Peninnah and there was Hannah. Hannah was barren. She didn't have any children. Peninnah had children and mocked her. Her husband loved her, but she wanted a child desperately. In some cultures, being childless in marriage is a terrible thing, especially in my culture, the Indian culture, more especially in India. I remember once the president of a teachers' training college came for prayer, and she said, "I need a child desperately." You could see she had a lot of gratification in life. She had risen among the ranks, became the president of a teachers' training college, but she lacked in one vital thing. She was barren. I was at a crusade in India. We had the crusade at the same spot in Andhra Pradesh, the Telugu area, in a small town called Anantapur. It was about 2 hours from Bangalore, which is called Bengaluru these days. There was a couple all excited, and my friend Dr. Lawrence brought these two people to me, and he said, "They want to come and see you and thank you." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "You prayed for them a year ago. They were barren for quite a while, and God gave them a beautiful baby." That's amazing. They got pregnant almost to the day when the prayer was made. God is awesome. Here was Hannah in the same predicament. She prayed silently in the temple, pouring out her heart and her soul to God. The prophet or the priest Eli, he thought that she was drunk and said, "Woman, it's quite early in the morning, and you drunk at this day, or at this time of the morning." She poured her soul in anguish to God. You know, sometimes prayer meetings can become a place to pick up fresh gossip. Don't tell people a whole lot about your personal story. Let God know about it. No one heard her words but God, and he answered by giving her Samuel. She said, "God, if you give me a child, I'll give him back to you." And you know, Samuel was one of the greatest prophets in Israel. He was a kingmaker. He anointed the first king whom he loved dearly, Saul, the son of Kish. And then he anointed David, the son of Jesse. Hannah prayed silently in the temple. She poured out her soul in anguish. No one heard her words but God, and he answered by giving her Samuel. Well, you know, she didn't pray in the temple. She prayed, I guess, in the tabernacle, because the temple was only built under Solomon's reign. No one heard her words but God, and he answered her by giving Samuel. She had other children after Samuel. But if I could use the term, Samuel was a blue-eyed boy. I don't know whether he had blue-eyed, but by blue-eyed I mean she loved him. But she gave her best to God. You know, when we give, we need to give our best to God. Then there was Daniel, evidence of which is found in Daniel 6 and 10. Daniel was even threatened with death. But he went into his upper room. He shut the windows and the doors, and he prayed privately to God 3 times a day. He was never intimidated. In a way, this was a public gesture, because they didn't want Daniel to pray to his God. But Daniel was going to pray anyway. They knew he was praying. But while it was a public gesture in some ways, it was totally private. They knew he was praying 3 times a day. But he prayed in private. He shut his windows. He went into his upper room. You wonder the miracles that God did in the lives of these young men in Babylon under the rule of King Nebuchadnezzar. There was King Belshazzar, and then there was King Darius, and Daniel was a little bit under Cyrus's rule also, if I'm not mistaken. Daniel became prime minister in Babylon. He was able to interpret dreams. When you're in the secret place, God gives you secrets. The secret of the Lord is with those that love him. Daniel was a powerful man, taken with other young men who showed fair promise, who was handsome. They were handsome. They were educated. They came from an aristocratic class. And in the first deportation out of Jerusalem, after the temple was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar, he took the best to Babylon. And Daniel was among the best. Daniel also had great insights into apocalyptic events that were to come. It's amazing. The first coming of Jesus had not yet taken place, but Daniel had insight into his second coming. There are several words for the second coming. One is the word epiphania, which means manifestation. The other one is apocalypsis, which has to do with future things, a revelation. And then the next word is the word parousia, which is the personal presence of the King, the day of the Lord. Another man who prayed in secret in the Old Testament was Moses. Moses was an intercessor per excellence. God chooses the right kind of man for the right kind of task often. And God chose Moses. He was called Moses because he was taken out of the water. Through providential circumstances, he grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Moses loved the people God had entrusted to him. Moses was a good pastor to the Hebrew nation. Moses set up a tent of meeting outside the camp where he would speak with God face to face. We need to speak to God face to face. In Hebrew, I think the words are panim el panim. I think it means to splash water on the face. There's nothing like splashing water on the face on a hot day. Israel were intrigued with the acts of God, but Moses sought the face of God. Moses was alone with God alone in the mountain for 40 days. It was at that time he received the 10 commandments, and I think it was at that time God gave him all the revelations of creation. Moses is the man who penned the words, "In the beginning was the Word." No, that is John. It's so similar. Moses wrote, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. And God said, 'Light be,' and there was light." I heard a sermon the other day on God being the light, and I heard a little bit about the sun, the scientific facts of the sun. Every second there is the equivalency of several thousands of atomic bombs going off in the sun. It's amazing. They say the sun's energy or the sun's power is waning off, and one day the sun will be darkness. For green energy, it's important, but I think we take it too far. God's going to destroy this earth one day. The earth will melt like wax, and God's going to give us a new heaven and a new earth. God has a way of replenishing the planet. I thank God for earth. Today I saw pictures of our town taken by a drone. A lady posted it on Facebook. It was phenomenal. The earth can be so beautiful. And it's so beautiful here in the summer when the trees are full of lush and green. I love the Ohio River Valley. I love southeastern Indiana. I live at the banks of the Ohio River in a small town called VV, Indiana. Our first settlers here were Swiss, French-speaking Swiss. So there's a town in Switzerland that's called Vevey. French people first came here, so this is a commercial center for winemaking, the first in the country. You know, the French are great on food and wine and these things. Moses spoke face to face with God. Then there was Nehemiah. Nehemiah 2:4-5 speaks about Nehemiah's encounter with the king. He was a cupbearer. That was quite a high position. It was a kind of butler of sorts. It was the king's advisor, one of the main people who saw the king every day. He also tasted the food before the king ate it, so if anyone had to die, he'll die. The king saw him sad. His countenance was sad. Before answering the king said, "What's up? What's wrong, Nehemiah? Is something bothering you?" You know, protocol before an Eastern monarch was very stringent. You had to be happy. The king could have you executed for looking sad. But before answering the king, Nehemiah offered a quick, silent prayer in his heart before God. His prayer might have been as simple as help. Often we think we need to be elongated in our prayer. But Nehemiah secured permission for the rebuilding of the wall and the funding of it. And Nehemiah was one of the ones who headed the expedition. We are looking at examples of those who offered private prayer in the Old Testament. And then there was Elijah, the representation of the prophets, 1 Kings 19, 9-2. In a cave at Mount Horeb, he met God. Not in the wind, like he said, not in the earthquake or in the fire, but in a gentle whisper, showing the intimacy of private communion with God. God wants us to be in private communion with him, to develop a relationship with God. You don't have to show people the glow that comes from being in the presence of God. The light will shine like Moses' light shone when he was 40 days alone with God in the mountain. When he came down, his face shone with the glory of God. You see the glory of God rubbed off on him, but Moses was sneaky. He wore a veil so people would not be blinded by the glory of God that reflected from him. But when the glory faded off, Moses still wore the veil. I endeavored in this session to speak to you about examples in the Old Testament of people who spend time in the private place, the place of intimacy. There's a place for the public place. I quoted Elijah. Elijah also prayed publicly, and he prayed powerfully. He prayed at Mount Carmel, where the prophets of Baal were. And he mocked their prayer. He said, okay, make a bullock, make an altar, put water around it, put an animal on it, and pray that your God reveals himself by fire. And they prayed. And in the morning, he would say, come on, pray louder. Maybe your God is sleeping. You need to get him up. And then at lunchtime, he said, well, you need to pray louder. Maybe your God has taken a break. And then Elijah, full of the Spirit and the power of God, called down fire from heaven. And in a moment, the whole bullock was ignited. God revealed himself by fire. There's a place for public prayer. There's a place for private prayer. It's amazing. I'm a public person. I love to pray with someone rather than praying myself sometimes. I pray my own way myself. But sometimes if I'm praying with somebody and we have the right connection, I can pray for hours. But while public praying and praying corporately with others is important, we need a private, intimate relationship with God that's developed in the quiet place. May God bless you and love you.